Welcome to We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden.
You're listening to We're Gonna Run It.
What's your game plan?
Can they run, but will they run? If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
Gutless. We're gonna run it.
We're gonna play blue collar. Enjoy it. I said it. Have a little heart and have some stones.
We're gonna run it.
If you want to throw an RPO, you got to run first, pass second. That's why it's not called a PRO. It's an RPO. You got to start with a running game that puts people on their heel.
Take a look at my algo. His algo is used with all data from last year. You're so smart, you're stupid.
We're gonna run it.
And the people that believe that talking head are even stupider than what I thought. I said it.
If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
You got no shot to get back into the series. No shot. I said it. What's your game plan?
We're gonna run it.
All right. Week number 5 of the college football season is here. Breaking news across the landscape. Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden breaking it down. Coach, will start with the John Mateer injury. John Mateer out for 3 weeks after a great performance against Auburn. He threw for 271 yards, rushed for a touchdown as well, 29 yards, en route to the 24-17 home win and cover over the Auburn Tigers. But now the news came down that John Mateer just had thumb surgery. He's going to be out for 3 weeks. How does this affect the Oklahoma Sooners moving forward?
Well, it's got to affect them because they pretty much said that he's the reason that they made the improvement from last year, that the quarterback they had last year, Jackson Arnold, although I didn't think he was that bad at Auburn, hasn't been, they needed a different direction. And this guy is the answer. And after the first 3 games and after beating Michigan and even beating Auburn, this is a Heisman top Heisman candidate. And I've got this theory that if you got more than one quarterback, you haven't got a quarterback. Usually when you got a top guy, it's got to go down. So I haven't seen the new one yet, how he's going to do it. But unless he's got the same deal that Ole Miss has, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
So the backup is Michael Hawkins. Now,
Yes.
Michael Hawkins split time with Jackson Arnold last year. Jackson Arnold, as we said multiple times in big matchups, did not step up. He got pulled in the Tennessee home loss earlier in the year. Michael Hawkins actually did get the road win over Auburn last year, played in the bowl game against Navy, couldn't get it done. But I think it's important to also note, you and I did a show this morning, this afternoon, and at that particular time, John Mateer was a 10-1 shot, Coach, to win the Heisman Trophy. He was within striking distance. You look now, I don't even know across multiple books if he's there. He's fallen off a cliff. But bigger picture, when you think about Mateer and you just think about Mateer now 100-1 to win the Heisman Trophy, and think about the win total for Oklahoma and how this affects their SEC championship run. This is a team that's 4-0. Mindset-wise, could Brett Venables and this staff keep it together to at least have Mateer come back and obviously the team be undefeated?
Well, again, a lot of things now we don't know about. How long is he going to be out? We know that if this quarterback Hawkins was the answer, they wouldn't have gone after Mateer or he wouldn't have won the job. So whatever they're doing right now is not going to be what they expected. So can they win the game against Michigan or Auburn or the ones they have in the future with Mateer not being there? I don't know the answer to that because he definitely was a big factor in their victories. And so now I think we've got to watch and see because it's going to be a lot of closer football games. I don't think the odds are nearly as well. I think no one's expecting them to have the perfect answer for this, but there have been ways to bring a guy in, make sure he just manages the offense. But in this day and age, and definitely in the SEC, unless you can run and throw the ball effectively, you're eventually not going to get to the top.
Now, we'll see how that game plays out. They're in a bye week this week, so he gets a week of rest. They do face Kent State, a team that got dismantled by Florida State, Coach. They lost 66-10. They gave up 498 rushing yards, 9.2 yards per carry to Florida State, and 8 rushing touchdowns. I think the whole Oklahoma offense will be just fine with Michael Hawkins running it. that offensive line. It's really the week 3 matchup, or 3 weeks from today, when Oklahoma squares off against Texas, their arch rival in the Red River rivalry. With a thumb injury on your throwing hand, that's going to be very difficult. even if he's back and feels good, not throwing the football for 3 weeks is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many unknown to this. Very few, and I've been a head coach 28 years in college, and when I have a surgery to my throwing hand, I very seldom expect a quarterback to be back at the same ability-wise or capability that he was before he left, if he comes back at all. Because you got to remember, a quarterback too is that they have to. You can't have that thigh hand can't be nicked up. You can have a bad left hand, you can have a bad left shoulder at times, but that right hand needs to be right there to grip that ball. So again, I just think there's too many unknowns right now. We know for a fact while he's not playing, they're going to have to find a way to win in other ways. Great special teams, great defense, run the football, get the throwing mixed in, and good throwing situations where you can run the ball in short yardage and that kind of things. I think is what they've got to do. But get behind, have to have the quarterback throw every time to win the game, which has to happen sometimes. I think we're hoping that doesn't happen if we're Oklahoma.
Well, we'll see exactly how that plays out when they do face Kent State in a couple of weeks. We'll get a better update about where John Mateer is in the rehab and whether he will, in fact, at all play during the regular season. We'll see, in fact, if that plays out, hopefully for Sooner fans. I mean, this team has momentum. They have a little Joe Moe on their side, Coach. This is a huge blow to their college football playoff odds. So break that down in a little bit later in the show. The other breaking news came down earlier this morning. Mike Gundy let go by Oklahoma State. This is a team that came off a disappointing home loss to Tulsa, a team that they had beaten 10 straight. They were 9.5-point home favorites. They were 0-9 in the conference last year. And it's a complete 360 to where they were 5 years ago. 5 years ago, over the past 5 seasons, they have competed for 2 Big 12 championships.
Yep.
They lost both, but when Jim Knowles walked out that door, Coach, as DC, this team has never been the same, and they haven't had an identity since.
Yeah, I mean, that's the head coach's responsibility to replace the assistants and put somebody in that's just as effective. And some point in time in your career, you get at this point where you didn't do it or you can't do it. And at this point, I think after not beating a conference team last year, and then renegotiating the contract. Think about this. He sat down with the university and they renegotiated the contract. They made it easier on both parties. They made it so that something happened to him, he would even help them find a new coach in some type of advisory position. I got a feeling they had already made decisions that if it didn't go right, he would be willing to accept the buyout, which he has. It's a nice buyout. And they could do it early now, so they have time to find a coach. You know, the question is, what will they do? Will they step in within the staff? Or will they move on the outside? I think they'll be moving on the outside.
Well, let me ask you this, because I saw, a couple of memes on X, and would Jimbo ever consider the Oklahoma State, or is Jimbo looking for maybe a different type of job, whether it be SEC or Big Ten or something, with maybe bigger bucks? Would he entertain Oklahoma State?
I can't speak for Jimbo. I do believe that he has that burning fire in his belly again to coach again. And I don't think he's going to be one to, I know when I went back into coaching after 10 years at ABC, I was just wanting to go coach ball and have a good time, kind of start over. I didn't think I could redo the national championship team we had at Auburn in those years. I just wanted to go. I didn't care about the level. I just wanted to coach. I think Jimbo is going to have the right situation. And if you look at a school like Virginia Tech as opposed to Oklahoma, I think an Oklahoma State might be that perfect level, especially if they're making this move and removing a long-standing Oklahoma graduate, great coach, great player like Gundy. They may be ready to put some NIL money and make some major commitments, because I think Gundy made it clear publicly they've got to step up the NIL department if they're going to compete with other people in the conference.
And that's crazy. It's crazy to think about that when Boone Pickens was alive,
Right.
he threw a ton of money into the program, right? It was prior
Right.
to NIL. He put a lot into the stadium, and that's maybe you could say the pinnacle over the last decade of Oklahoma State's success.
Right.
They knocked off Caleb Williams. They knocked off, a couple of years ago, they knocked off Oklahoma before in the last Bedlam game before they moved on to the SEC. So, it is interesting to see exactly what transpires in Oklahoma State, in Stillwater. Let me ask you this, because they're 20.5-point underdogs to Baylor. And Baylor's a team that you and I were very high on. I love Sawyer Robertson. They had a disappointing home loss. They're catching 20.5, Coach. With NIL, it's a totally different landscape, right? Because prior to NIL, you might get some kids that are checked out. But now, knowing Gundy's not going to be there, any good good athlete is going to say, hey, I'm going to move on to a different program. Maybe I'll transfer. If I haven't played the 4 games yet, if I'm a freshman, I'll get my red shirt and I'll leave, right? So that's a problem now, more so with NIL than when it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Look at Florida State last year. They had really gone into the portal and brought in a great group of players, some NILs. They thought the talent level, they thought they got the right quarterback too, but when things went south, everybody backed out. Everybody lost the desire, and Norvell could not pull it together. That's what's going to happen to teams where they have a lot of NILs, and all of a sudden you fire your coach, and you've already told everybody, okay, we're waiting for next year with a new coach. Then they don't even think they fit in, and they very well check out. Now, I've coached with guys that were offered NIL from other teams in the middle of my season, and I've looked them in the eye before a game, and they're checked out. I know what that looks like. So that's going to be a tough situation. Now, I don't know the situation at Oklahoma State, whether there's a lot of the numbers of players that are there only because of NIL, because you would listen to Mike Gundy, you would say we don't have nearly the people on NIL that everybody else does. But obviously, that's got to be the amount of money, not so much that they don't get something, because everybody's kind of getting something.
Yeah, well, exactly. And we'll see exactly how that transpires in Stillwater. I would only lean to Baylor here in this type of situation.
Yeah.
Again, I want to see how this team performs. Last year, again, didn't win a conference game. They have no offensive identity. Zane Flores hasn't been the answer after Henji, the starter, went down. So this is going to be very difficult for them to regroup in any capacity. Another team on the cusp of this, and we have to monitor this. Now, the opening spread had Notre Dame a 6.5-point road favorite over Arkansas. I've been very high on this Arkansas team. I love Sam Pittman. I love Petrino. This offense, we know they could score against anybody. You could make the argument, Coach, with the 2 fumbles, they potentially could be 4-0 as opposed to 2-2, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's amazing right now.
But what's the mindset of those kids? They've just lost 2 just unbearable losses by fumbling the ball in the last minutes of the game. If they start to hear a lot of rumblings in the local talk radio, in their classrooms by other students, if they start to hear all this stuff, it will affect their play. And it isn't just about Notre Dame. After Notre Dame comes Tennessee and Texas A&M and Auburn and LSU and Texas and Missouri. They've got a bunch of good football teams left on their schedule. I can find 7 that they're going to have to find a way to win when they're going to be underdogs on their schedule. So I don't know if it's this week that they may get their spirits back. But my concern would be after losing 2 games where they played their heart out, and then the ball gets on the ground and they lose the game because somebody fumbled a football. That's a tough way to lose football games.
It really is. And the concern I have this week, and I don't love the way Notre Dame's playing defensively.
No.
And they're going to have to contain Taylor Green, because Taylor Green, again, if Taylor Green was on any other team, if he was on LSU, if he was on Alabama, if he was on Ohio State, Taylor Green might be one of the best quarterbacks in all FBS.
It might be.
I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, would you agree with that? That he has that type of skill?
Put him on Georgia Tech. Put him on that positive attitude, that type of offense and defense and head coach. Put him in that environment. Look what he does. What's going on with Haynes King? They remind me a lot of each other anyway. But I agree. I mean, but that's kind of like he elevates Arkansas. But you just can't. He can't. Unfortunately, now he may not, have an opportunity to play somewhere else. But he is. But he is a. He'll have to perform well because again, I don't want to say they're not going to be able to play at their highest peak.
Right.
But it's going to get more difficult and more difficult. And if they're going to get back on the winning side, it really needs to be against Notre Dame because there's a lot of teams even better than Notre Dame on their schedule.
Absolutely, and that's why you're going to get their best effort. And I think that's why you're seeing the spread go from 6.5 down to 4. The concern I have is that I'm not sold on the front seven. They could score with anybody, Arkansas.
Right.
But that front seven is giving up $160 on the ground. And you get a big physical offensive line, and I know that Notre Dame is slowly starting to run the football better.
Yeah.
But to me, that is the matchup. When you have an explosive offense and you have a team that can run it on, especially on the road, just like we're saying here, we're going to run it. You can keep Taylor Green on the sidelines for a period of time. And I still believe more in Notre Dame's defense than I do Arkansas's that gave up 41 to Ole Miss and got ripped by 32. They were in the driver's seat in the second half, and Memphis ripped that defense.
Yeah. Memphis. When you watch that football game, and you got to remember that school's right across the river. That's one they don't lose to. It's been a long time since they lost that game to Memphis, and so that one has a bigger impact on their fan base and on their local support than other games that you would think. I mean, even Ole Miss, they're both border wars. Ole Miss is a border of Arkansas, and so is Memphis. And those are tough losses. So, again, if they're going to get back in it with a chance to turn their season around to a winning season or a bowl season, it must start against Notre Dame.
Now, their win total was 5.5. I did say they would go over that. I'm a little upset that they fumbled the football in back-to-back weeks. The kid Mike Washington's a gamer, too. I love him. He could catch the football. He was basically spearheading that drive. And then it's a shame, they grabbed his ankles and punched the football out. Next thing you know, you get the controversial call. It was the right call for Memphis. So we'll see exactly. I like Notre Dame in that matchup. I just think the physicality and the offensive defensive lines, I'd rather take a shot with Freeman. I believe in this Arkansas team, but they basically have to win it at home. And I think that's the problem that I just can't buy into. But I do give the quarterback advantage, Green over Carr, in this matchup. The other game that I think, had a lot of people scratching their heads was the Florida-Miami game.
Yeah.
Not so much for, the margin of victory, but we talked about it earlier, how good the Miami defense is. Is it that good to hold Florida to 0 of 14 or 13 on third down conversions, a total of 141 yards? Or is this team with Billy Napier completely checked out with DJ Lagway?
Well, other than that opening game against Long Island, offensively they haven't done much. Lagway has not been able to push this offense to a higher level. And they haven't been able to score points, LSU and of course, Miami. Now, Miami is a very good team, a very strong team. And the two defenses they've just played, Florida's done a heck of a job man-to-man defensively, talent-wise. They matched up very well, except they're not doing anything creative on offense. Now, I don't know if that's the game plan or the guy putting the game plan together or that Lagway. I know he threw the interceptions against LSU, and you can't win with 5 turnovers like that. But they're defensively, they're playing. I mean, half the guys on the field in Florida colors are playing winning football. That's the tough thing for them. And whoever's recruiting for them, and Billy Napier's always been a great recruiter. I was talking to my brother who hired him at Clemson when my brother was the head coach. He hired him because he was a great recruiter. And that's what he's usually been. I coached against him when he was at Lafayette. He took that team above everybody else in the Sun Belt and elevated that team to the championship level. I'm a little bit surprised they haven't been able to do that offensively at Florida. But that's the case with Florida. They I don't know if they can. They're kind of in the same schedule that Arkansas is facing. Arkansas got that one and maybe a little bit tougher in their situation. Miami, I think Miami just steadily. They were just very steady in doing the right things to beat a pretty solid athletic football team.
We'll see. They get Florida State in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So Florida State continues to win, and they're undefeated. It's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. I will say when I look at DJ Lagway, he completes 73% of his passes for 61 yards. I mean, Coach, 61 yards on 17 completions? We're dinking and dunking our whole way down the field. I mean, they got to open it up. They have to.
Well, you get into a vicious cycle. They couldn't run the ball well, so they get in long yardage situations. You don't want to have a bunch of sacks, or he just threw 5 interceptions the week before, and so you get nervous. And the game's 13-10. You think, as long as we may pull this off, if we just score at the end, and so then you get in that vicious cycle of not doing anything that can create a turnover like you had the week before, and all of a sudden you sit there. And you got to remember, it was 4th and 3, and they were down 13-10, I think, on the 10-yard line going in. Right. And Miami held them and drove. It was 75 yards. Miami drove to end the football game to get that touchdown ahead. Attacked another one later, but that's what they were doing. They had been shocked the week before that every time they had a chance to score, Lagway threw an interception. And I think what you saw that offensively in that game to play out. Problem is, you got to throw it. You got to throw caution to the wind and go out there and try to let loose and win a football game. But it's hard to imagine that guy who's calling plays in that press box and his quarterback threw 5 interceptions the week before.
Yeah, so I said 17-23. It was 12-23, 52%.
Yeah,
still 2.7 yards per pass is not going to get it done. Moving forward, we have the Magnolia Bowl. The last 5 meetings, Coach, the home team has won. Now, I have to ask you this. I don't know if you saw the breaking news that came out this week with Lane Kiffin's daughter.
I saw the picture.
Okay, she's dating Whit Weeks, the captain of the LSU defense. What is going on now? Lane loves the hype. What is going on over there?
I think his daughter's just like him. She loves the hype too. Now he's probably a fine, outstanding young man, just like he's a leader and a fine football player. But you knew letting that get out, it was going to be a hype. It was almost like the singer, the girl over the Kansas City Chiefs who date. It's like it's going to be huge news, with Taylor Swift and all that.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and it is.
Does Kiffin talk to his daughter during game week? I don't know. I would.
Probably not. I had 5 daughters. I could have seen my daughter getting a picture on Facebook or something, and not thinking anything of it, and or thinking it's funny. That's kind of the impression. But and I don't know nobody's going to play differently. His Ole Miss guys aren't going to fool with that. I imagine Whit Weeks is going to play like he always does. He's a reckless, leading, go after it football player. So it's an interesting story. It's got Kiffin all over it. It's just she's probably she doesn't mind the publicity, I imagine, any more than Lane does.
Absolutely. Now, Whit Weeks was knocked out of the game, not knocked out, but he was taken
penalized
out of the game for targeting in the first half against Florida. We talk about the 5 interceptions a couple of weeks ago. They took one to the house. Last 2 weeks ago, he was out of the game against Southeast Louisiana. LSU's offense sort of got it back into gear. That's the matchup for me, I think, Coach. Can LSU run on the front 7 of Ole Miss? As good as Trinidad Chambliss has been, we know that this defense at times, even though they stepped up against Tulane, for me, has been a little suspect. And I understand that Nussmeier's just a drop-back guy, but I actually think LSU can run and attack them on the ground. Yeah. I think that'll open up the passing attack. I actually think LSU breaks the string of road teams losing over the last 5 years. I think they win the game outright.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward LSU too. I just think I just think the way their defensive plays, and their quarterback isn't playing bad now. He's just not going out there. Their offensive style is not to let him put up tons of numbers. You see Indiana up there. I don't care. They're going to throw the ball every play. They're going to go out there and go for points. And I think LSU is one of those that they're going to play great defense and run the football and try to do that. So I think the key is running the football is so important for Nussmeier this year, because not only does it reduce your third downs for running the football, but it also gets you into some short yardage where you can throw deep on for second ones, second threes. Now you can throw the explosive play, because it's those explosive plays that comes off the running game as much as it is manageable third downs, because you want both of those. And I've always said, and my dad taught me this, when I'm playing a great defense, and it's going to be hard to drive 12 plays, I better have some explosive chunk plays, because I'm not going to beat them any other way. I can remember one game I was in the press box, and my dad said, get me a 4th and 1. Get me a 4th and 1. Call me a play that'll leave, because they get in the same defense every time on 4th and 1, and I can throw the bomb. Because I can score on a 1-play drive. I may not be able to get a 12-play drive. So all I'm saying is LSU, if they can run the football, it gets them down into manageable third downs, and it gives them a chance to hit some explosive plays, because he can throw it, and they've got some guys that can go get it.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, matchup-wise, not this year, but last year, the Achilles heel and the weakness of LSU's defense was a mobile guy, a mobile quarterback. We saw last year Marcel Reed abuse them on the perimeter in the second half. So in order for LSU to win this game defensively, they got to contain Chambliss. They can't allow Trinidad Chambliss to beat us on the perimeter and get a $112 on the ground in the RPO game. We're going to be dead to rights in that type of game.
And there is a reason why everybody wants a great dual threat quarterback, because it's not easy to stop them. If you can be a dual threat with great running ability, and you can throw it, I mean, you're a great thrower. Then you can't cover everything as a defense.
Right.
That's why it's so hard to stop the quarterback right now. I love Trinidad at the quarterback at Ole Miss.
Right.
Because he can run and throw, and he's a very accurate thrower, and that's going to be the key there.
It's interesting. Last year was 29-26. This total is at 52.5. I just think it's part of it is that LSU's been trending to unders. We haven't seen that offense sort of open up. LSU averaging $116 on the ground per game. They're averaging 275 through the air. On the flip side, we see 218 for the rushing attack of Ole Miss, averaging 5 yards per carry and 13 rushing touchdowns. They're also averaging 324 passing yards per game. That's going up against the secondary of LSU, holding opposing quarterbacks, coach, to 58% completion percentage. So that's what we'll discuss throughout the week in this game. It's going to be interesting because margin of victory, margin of defeat will matter, especially when we're talking about at-large teams. If one of these teams, let's say, is not in the SEC championship and they're like Tennessee last year, and you look at the body of work, right? The margin of defeat matters, especially when we're breaking these games down. The other matchup, and it's the marquee one in the SEC, Alabama, Georgia. Now, Alabama's owned the series with Saban. They owned it last year with Kalen DeBoer. The dynamic 75-yard touchdown from Milroe to Ryan Williams pulls it out. Alabama has won 4 straight in the series, 4 of the last 5, I think. Yeah, 4. 9 of the last 10.
9 of the 10.
Yeah, 9 of the last 10 by 11 points per game. That's what it was. So the last 4 victories were by 11 points per game. Georgia, to me, though, and when you look at this, Georgia has an identity again. And people will say, wow, they gave up 40+ to Tennessee. I don't see it that way. Tennessee had an upgraded quarterback. Georgia's starting to run the football again. They're averaging 209 on the ground. Every game, they're 190, 198, 214. They are starting to pound the rock. That matters more to me than what the defense has done. And the other factor is Ty Simpson is not Jalen Milroe, right? So we're not getting the athleticism of Jalen Milroe the way he abused them last year, and that's why I like Georgia early on in this matchup.
Yeah, I really do. You did mention the one thing, and again, that's one of the toughest places to play. And under Kirby, I don't know that they've lost a home game in quite a while at the University of Georgia. It is a difference. The players have great pride in it. The fans take pride in it. The coaches take pride in it. Kirby Smart played at Georgia. It is a definite home field advantage, and I would almost put 2.5 points just on the fact that if these two teams were equal, the 2.5 points would go toward the home field advantage for Georgia in this circumstance. But I do think Georgia is better. I think they're a better football team, and I think they've shown it. Alabama, I mean, they beat a very poor Wisconsin team and ULM. And it's almost like North Carolina. They played two teams. Everybody thought they got better when they beat Charlotte and they beat Richmond, and they found out UCF. They didn't get better. The opponents just got worse. I'm yet to believe. I don't know yet how far Alabama has gone to say they are back yet, because they did not look well against Florida State, and they have to be a lot better football team against Georgia.
I agree. And I think also, when you look at the game, and you say they get Jam Miller, Max. That's a big asset to have with your offense. But I agree with your home field advantage, and I just feel now you could go to the Georgia Tech game last year and say Georgia was pushed to the limit a little bit. Again, mobile quarterback, right? So the mobile quarterback seems to give Georgia some problems as well. But when we're talking Ty Simpson, he's mobile, but he's not going to take the game over
the same,
like Jalen Milroe.
The speed, Jalen Milroe. I don't know if you remember that game. Every time they ran the ball for a score, it was on the edges, on the sideline. Georgia was trying to play Milroe inside out, not respecting his speed.
Right.
And they did. And by the time they figured it out, they were behind so bad they caught back up at halftime. But the Simpson at Alabama now doesn't have that kind of speed. Even if he's a tough runner, he can't threaten Georgia with ability to outrun their defense. He just got to be a tough kid that picks up the yardage when it's there. And so I don't think there's any comparison, by the way, you could attack Georgia with Milroe, just because of the skills that he did have running the football were much stronger than Ty Simpson is now. So I don't think that'll be as much a factor.
I agree with you. So that's what's going to play out throughout the week. We'll dive more into the numbers. The two Big Ten games are huge, Coach.
Yeah.
As it relates to obviously conference odds, but we talk about the top team in the country, Ohio State. They go into a hornet's nest here in Seattle with Damon Williams, and just how much weight. And I'm curious, because I've heard this from a lot of people. So I want to get your take on it. I've heard that LSU is overrated because now we've seen Clemson start 1-3. And we believe that Ohio State is the most dominant team in the country because they knocked off Texas in week number 1. So let me just address both and I will get your take. For me, I believe that I don't discount Clemson being 1-3.
Yep.
The simple fact is you're going to get that team's best effort. That was a national championship contender week 1 in their house with 6 months of preparation. That was the most prepared Clemson team.
Absolutely.
In that type of environment. Once they start to lose, different team. It's a different mentality. Right. Do we agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because I think you got the best Clemson was going to be in that first game. They lost the football game, but you got them when they were believing they were a top 4 team in the country, and they played with that. And LSU went to their place and knocked them off. Another place very hard to win when you got a team that's talented and believes they're going to win.
Right. I agree with that. So now when we look at this Ohio State team, right, and you have Julian Sayin, the quarterback, who played in a tough game, but it was in his house now. Now he's got a real, true road environment going up against a team that could score points. They're physical defensively. Jed Fish and this team are just, they're giving up only 18 points per game and putting up 55, Coach.
Yeah.
Game plan-wise for Ryan Day, are we opening it up? Because they were very conservative early on with saying against Texas.
I think now that you're into the middle part of your schedule, and even though your quarterback is a first-year starter, he is now a starter. He's been in the battle enough times that you ought to be running your offense. You ought to be saying, no, I've got to be careful because it's a first road trip. And again, unless you're in a huge stadium that has an incredible atmosphere beyond what most people do, I don't think it makes a lot of difference to a team, to a quarterback that plays in big stadiums most every week. So, yeah, I think you got to go out there, and you're playing Washington on the road. You got to go out there and be the best you can be, or you're going to go out there and lose one of these games. Now, I do think Ohio State is a better football team. If it just came to who's going to win the game and it's just a straight up who's going to win it, Ohio State's a better football team. Go run your offense, play great defense, and if you don't turn the ball over and give up explosive plays, you're going to win. You're going to go out there, but if you play it close to the vest and you're worried about making mistakes, you're going to play right into Washington's hands. You're going to play right into a close ball game. And when I say close, a couple of points as opposed to being, 9, 10, 12 points is a much more comfortable lead than a field goal away from being behind, So anyway, I think just Ohio State now needs to show they've got great receivers, great running backs. They should be they should be hitting the pedal to the metal and getting after it on offense and putting points on the board. And that's the way they should approach playing Washington.
It's interesting because you're absolutely right. You talk about Cornell Tate, you talk about Jeremiah Smith. Both of those players have basically lit it up right now. 32 receptions, over 500 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. Sayin has played very well, 78% completion percentage, 779 through the air, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But you were a play caller throughout your years as head coach, right?
Right.
What if I told you your offense was humming and converting 75% of its third down opportunities, putting up over 530 yards of total offense? And oh, by the way, I got a quarterback in Damon Williams that completes 73% of his passes, and he could scoop, coach. He's averaging 6.4 yards per carry. Would you buy it? Would you want to coach that team?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think Washington goes to this game thinking we don't have enough weapons. We don't have enough bullets in our gun. We don't have the ability to score points. They've got to go in there and say, you know what? We got pretty good people too. And let's do what we do best, and that's go out there and play football. We're not going to go out there and just make sure we don't make a mistake and punt and play field position and say, defense, go out there and do a good job and we won't lose it for you. I think when you've got that kind of explosiveness and that kind of quarterback and the team that you are, and you're undefeated, go out there and make sure you're playing your game too. So I don't see, sometimes you'll get to a game where you got a team that's so underrated, so far below the other team that they're just trying to hang on. If I was at ULM or at Akron and I'm playing a Power 4 team and they're favored by 37, I'm just gonna pray that I can keep it close till halftime. Well, that's not what you do at Washington. You go out there and do what Syracuse did to Clemson. You go let it loose.
Right.
You think for a second that Fran Brown, when he called an onside kick after his first score, he said, I'm getting after him. That's what I'm going to do. What a statement that makes to your team and to your players when a head coach sets the tone like that. That's what I need to do at Washington. If you're going to be you're playing number one team. Head coach, set the tempo, set the tone. Let them know what you plan on doing this game. And I think that's Washington's best chance to win a football game.
It is. And I actually like them with the points. We'll break it down later in the week. Number 1 third down offense in all of FBS. Who's number 2? Florida State, coach. 66% with Castellanos. What a drop-off, though. You got 75%. Last week prior to that, we had Arkansas, Washington. We had a ton of teams in the 70s. What a difference a week makes in college football. But we always talk about styles making fights, and this is going to be a really interesting matchup because I don't know, does Washington push tempo because they feel they have the more complete quarterback, because they're at home? Do they want to push tempo in this matchup to force Sayin to go back and forth with them, or are they going to play a lower scoring? I can't imagine that they would play a lower scoring game. I sort of like this total in the ball game, even though both defenses are playing lights out. I mean, 25% third down defense for Caleb Downs in Ohio State. They're giving up 5 points per game. They've only given up 2 passing touchdowns and holding opposing quarterbacks to 52% completion percentage. So here's the thing, though. I think, and I'm going to say this. You ready? Mark my words.
Yep.
Matt Patricia has done a fantastic job. He gets exposed in this game. True road game in this environment, I think he gets exposed. I think they sort of exploit the secondary, and to me, that's the difference.
I don't know yet. It's still early in the season for me to feel like that, and for me to feel like that that they can stop Ohio State from being a score with all the talent they have got on their football team. But you know what? And I want to go back and talk a little bit about tempo too. That you got to remember. I think one of the things that a tempo do you do tempo or do you not do tempo? Well, I think the key is to change up, do tempo some, and then pull off and don't do it all the time. If you want to get a defense really off balance, tempo, then all of a sudden don't go tempo, and all of a sudden they got their weight on their hand, they're in a 3-point stance, and they sit there for about 45 seconds till you call the play. So I think even if you're a tempo team, and I think if that's what you do, then do it. Don't back off of it, because you can't hardly, when you don't play tempo, and I played tempo and I played the old huddle. When you're a tempo team and all of a sudden you say, okay, this game plan, we are not going to use tempo, we're going to slow it down, you can't hardly get any momentum. You can't get your kids into the game. They're not used to playing that way, and it's a different way of playing. I mean, I go back to the 80s when I got in a huddle every time, and my quarterback got under center, and things were a little bit slower back then. You know, we're so used to playing tempo. I think sometimes if we try to not do it, we take the excitement away from our players. They think we're not playing as hard as we can or the way we should. And so the good teams now, I do know, are not just playing a tempo. They're mixing tempo, so they're keeping the defense off balanced.
Yeah, interesting. Another big game. That game is, I believe, 3:30.
Yeah.
So we got to check the time. The late night game in the Big Ten is the battle and rematch of the Big Ten championship. Drew Aller and Penn State take on Dante Moore in Oregon. I think when you look at this game, just big picture, I would give the edge to Penn State for the simple fact that Aller, I believe, is the more experienced quarterback. Do I love Drew Aller? Absolutely not. In every big game, Drew Aller has not stepped up. He performed against Oregon in that regard, putting up numbers, but they didn't win the game or even come close to covering that line in the Big Ten championship. The one thing I worry about for Penn State is, do we believe that they can run the football effectively on this front seven of Oregon, only giving up $108 on the ground and 3.5 yards per carry, 3.3 to be exact? They're holding opposing offenses to 27% third down conversions. I like Dan Lanning in the spot as a dog. I just believe more in Oregon, even though they don't have the quarterback advantage, than I do James Franklin. And this team has a ton of pressure, Coach, to step up and actually win a game that matters.
Well, and I think that's what we've said all along, that until they win a game that matters, they're not going to have the championship contender. They're not going to be one that get to that championship level. And I said before we did the season, when we first started talking about these teams, that my sleeper team was Penn State. And to be the sleeper team, you got to win this game. You've got to win this game. Now, I don't think Oregon's as good as they were last year. I think they're very good. They've got great players, but I thought they were even better last year when they ran the table and ended up getting beat in the playoffs. I think Penn State is better, and I think Oregon's not as good. And being played at Penn State, I think this. Now, I don't know that this. I think Penn State wins this game, but I don't know that Penn State doesn't stumble down the road somewhere. I'm just saying, but they've got to win the big game if they're going to win a championship. And this is really the first one they've got this year that they've got to win a big game. So I drew like Alar has not played. He had a bad week. I want to say last week did not play great, but he still is a good, solid football player. When I think of Prabula and what he's doing so well for Missouri, he couldn't get on the field. I mean, he was back. He was a backup. But I've watched Alar. I thought Drew was good enough for them to build their football team around on offense, because they're not going to be fancy too much on offense. They're not going to go out there and throw deep ball in. You don't think of Tennessee offense and Penn State offense in the same light. You think of Penn State, you think they're more in line with a power football team. Almost a team that wants to play like Georgia. You know, they want to play more like Georgia. And Alar and a quarterback like Alar can fit into that system a lot more than he can fit into a a Florida State scoring machine or a
Right.
Tennessee type of deal.
Let me ask you this, because last year Penn State had Tom Allen as DC.
Right.
They now have national champion Jim Knowles that transferred over from Ohio State. Jim Knowles basically shut down that that offense with Dylan Gabriel last year in the semifinals. How much of an advantage is that to Penn State, knowing that Knowles, now it's a different offense, obviously, with Dante Moore, but tendencies, how much are we putting into Knowles? Because I would still give the edge to Ohio State's talent, obviously, last year defensively, than I am with Penn State this year. There's no Abdul Carter. They lose some key pieces. So even though Knowles understands how to maybe scheme, do we believe like that's that much of a factor and an advantage for Penn State here?
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. I don't think it's the deciding factor. I think it's great that he has an idea of the type of things that were effective last year against a team, and to keep that in mind. But he's got different people with different strengths and weaknesses. He's going to, whether it's his linebackers that blitz well, or his outside, or his corners, or his nickelbacks. If he gets different pressure certain ways, I think he's got to recognize the talent that he's got. But basically, I think it's an advantage to know that you've done some things and been successful. I know when I've coached against a certain team or a certain head coach or a coordinator, and I've had a great outing against them, I feel a lot better going against them next year because I know I can do it. It doesn't always mean it's going to happen, but I know if I just put it together, study them like I did last time, I'll find a way to beat this team.
Again, that's going to be the chess match that plays out. And when you look at Dante Moore, transferred from UCLA, didn't really fit, I guess, Chip Kelly's scheme or Chip Kelly moves on. Dante Moore transfers to Oregon, sits out last year, not sits out, but didn't really get a ton of playing time. 74% completion percentage, 962 through the air, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. This is the biggest game in his career. Hasn't played in a big game yet. What do you do if you're this offensive staff? Are we throwing caution to the wind? Dante, just go out there and light it up, or are we doing something early on, especially in this environment? Because you and I last time I was at Penn State, you were on the road. We were on the sidelines together when the Zips played, and you went toe-to-toe with Trace McSorley and Jensen James. You played Penn State right down to the wire, but we understand the field environment. What do you do as head coach here?
That to me, if I've got an environment going into like at Penn State, and they have a great home field environment, I think it's going to be a whiteout game, and it's going to be a lot of electricity. I'm going to find certain plays that I can go early in the game that are one-play reads. It's either a fake one way. Everybody, if you watch all the football games Saturday, half the team started with the same play. Fake the sweep left, then roll out to the right, hit the tight end in the flat. If it's covered, just throw it away or run. Give the quarterback against a great team something where he has not a lot of guesswork. He can mess it up, and if it's not there, he can run it for a few yards or throw it away, and he gets out of the pocket. And that's kind of what I would have some ways to throw the football to give my quarterback some confidence. At the same time, I definitely wouldn't be sitting in the pocket holding the ball for 2 or 3 reads before I figure out how the defensive front. I never want to do that early till I know how well I can protect, how much time he's going to have.
And I think also, too, on the road, it's important to score first. Right? Score first. Let's put the pressure on Drew Aller, a guy up into his career. And again, he has questions that he has to answer in this game along with his head coach. I think against AP top 25 competition, James Franklin is basically 4-20. That needs to change. And I don't want to say this negatively, but body of work, I think he did a better job taking Vanderbilt to back-to-back 9-4 seasons. Because Penn State is a blue blood, basically, right? I mean, I know we think Alabama, we think Georgia, we think all of the blue bloods in the SEC, but we're talking about a household name in Penn State. You got there, you've plateaued. We can't knock off Ohio State. We can't knock off Michigan when it matters.
I go back to watching Penn State when I was at West Virginia, and as a kid, my dad was coaching Franco Harris, and they had some blue collar people back in those days. They were always a blue collar team, but they have that other aura, of a Eastern football elite type of university, and that's what they have with them. But again, I do think that they can play tough ball. They need to go out there again and you're judged at Penn State by what you do against a few teams. What those games that you have not been able to win. And I'll say this, once you get to Penn State, the only ones that prove what kind of coach you are those 2 or 3 games against the very best people in the country. And unfortunately, I mean, I when I was at Auburn, it was Alabama. You could be 11-0 in Auburn and have saved your career, but you ain't saved your job yet because you ain't beat Alabama. And when my dad was at Florida State, he's the second winningest coach of all time. There's a lot of years he couldn't beat Miami. He couldn't beat them. They had great people, and he couldn't beat them. And until he did, and I said the same thing to Tom Osborne when he couldn't beat Barry Switzer in Oklahoma. Until he did, my dad and Tom won 5 national championships in the 90s. But for about 2 decades, you got to win that game. And that's kind of where James Franklin is right now. Is he going to step up and make that move into the elite? Or is he just going to say, I almost got there, and that's one of those things we're going to see.
It will be a great game. I mean, I don't think I'd be shocked. I think if both of these teams win, whoever does, I like Oregon with the points. I actually think they win the game outright, but I would be shocked, right? We would both be double-digit win either way.
Yeah, I don't think,
I mean, and I'm talking big double digits, 14, 17.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it. Yeah. I think it's going to be closer than that. I think the line it's going to be close to that. I've got what is it? Is it 3.5? 3.5.
3.5 right now. Yeah.
3.5. It's early. I'm leaning toward Penn State for me. I think you're leaning towards Oregon.
I am.
Like I said, I think it's going to be one of those within 3 to 5 points, one way or the other.
Yeah, let's talk just big picture. We got about 10 minutes. 2 things: the SEC championship odds, right?
Yeah.
So we have Georgia at 3-1, Texas right behind them at plus 310, Bama at plus 480, LSU at 7-1, A&M at 11-1, and Ole Miss.
Right.
Ole Miss is 11-1. You know, I think when we look at Ole Miss and we look at A&M plays Auburn now. Not going to be an easy game. And let me just say this about A&M. Great offense. Defense has holes. I was more impressed last week with Auburn's loss. Again, that defense impressed me.
Yeah.
The defense is legit. The defense bends, but they don't break. They play great red zone defense. They limit possessions. I mean, they get off the field. I was very impressed with this Auburn team. This is not going to be an easy game for A&M and Marcel Reed. They're going to have to work to pull this game out. But I guess the bigger question is A&M or Ole Miss for an SEC championship winner is 11-1. Would you buy into either before these games play out this weekend?
You know what? If I was going to, I have been leaning probably towards Ole Miss because of the fact that nobody feels like they're not on the radar. They're under the radar on everything. And they've got a lot of answers. They've got 2 quarterbacks. They've got a heck of a running back that can do it. They've got some big play receivers, and they're playing good defense. And so they've got a lot of the things that you need. And they've got nobody expecting anything. I haven't quite seen enough of that out of an A&M yet to think that they're there. But the way Marcel Reed played against Notre Dame, it just it elevated my thinking on them so much in one game that this team, if he can play like that every week, and they'll play better defense because I think that's a prerequisite for Coach Elko, that they're going to be a tough physical defensive team. But to be versatile like that with Marcel Reed, when I thought of him kind of as a guy that could hand off or dual threat run or a safe throw, but he threw down his intermediate and deep passes were fantastic last week against Notre Dame.
He's really becoming a better pocket passer. Yeah. You look at Texas A&M, the kid Concepcion that transferred in from NC State has been a great addition. And just the rushing attack as well. They're very balanced. And again, I think they have that mentality that they believe now that they could go toe-to-toe. They could put up 40 on anybody. The question remains, can Auburn wear them down? This is an intriguing line. 6.5 points, Coach. Back-to-back road games for Jackson Arnold and Auburn. This is a gauntlet of the schedule. They only rushed for 1.9 yards per carry last week. Jackson Arnold stepped up. He throws for 221, but for them to pull this type of game out, I feel like Auburn needs to win it 28-24. They're going to have to put up at least 28 points, I believe.
Yeah, it's they're going to have to probably put up, and that's the one thing. If Marcel Reed gets hot and gets this thing up into the low 30s or the high 20s, it becomes lesser of a chance that Auburn can win this game. I think Auburn's got to rely on that defense. And although I think Jackson Arnold showed he can throw and run, he's better off if he's running as much as he is throwing and not having to sit in the pocket and throw it more than 25 times a game, maybe. And so that the big part is if the defense at Auburn can play like they did against Oklahoma, then the Auburn offense can be able to get that ball. They've got some great. You got Eric Singleton at wideout along with Cam Coleman. They've got some guys that can. And I'll be honest with you, Auburn should have had 2 deep balls. They had guys wide open and missed deep balls. I told you my old saying, only two absolutes in sports, not the only 2, but 2 of the big absolutes. Short putts never go in, and overthrown deep balls never get caught. And you overthrow them, and that just doesn't happen. But Auburn's got some skill to make big plays, and they're going to need some of that because I got a feeling Marcel Reed is not going to just go back into a shell and not do some of the things he did against Notre Dame.
He missed that. I think it was Cam Coleman.
Yeah.
What was it, like about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter? He had him streaking down the sideline.
Oh.
Well, if he just needed a little more air under the football.
Oh, that's it, all air.
Just put a little air. He tried to throw it on a dart. Tell me if we're in agreement. Jackson Arnold needs to work on touch.
Yes, no doubt.
He wants to throw it as hard as possible. Sometimes just touch it in there, throw a little air under it. That works wonders. When you have a guy, he was streaking, Coach. That would have changed the whole complexity of the ball game if he hits that.
Yeah, and he needs to have a little better pocket presence. He would hold on to the ball too long, a little too much, And then I noticed several times he would scramble up into the offensive line where there were no outlets.
Right.
And so he could have easily thrown it away, but he would scramble up into a hole that didn't have any openings and then take a sack. And all I had to do was throw the ball away. And so if he can gain some of that pocket presence, it's going to help them because there's a lot of ways Auburn can be better. When you look at the 14 tackles for loss, the 10 sacks, and the 13 penalties, I think when you look at all those things, if you eliminate half of those just by correcting mistakes, it's going to give you. They can even have a much better football team, and too many good football players, in this thing. It's funny, and I just thought of this while we've been talking. Isn't it amazing how these teams, in utilizing the portal, they find a backup guy at Wake Forest or somebody at a 1AA program or a Ferris State.
Right.
And they study him, and he doesn't come in as a high school kid. He comes in, all of a sudden he changes the depth of your team or the guys that can make plays. And it's really changed the game. And that for us to pick is that there's guys that are now playing on teams that they didn't have last year.
Right.
But by great recruiting and great evaluation, they might have been a good player, a great player on an okay team, or a team that wasn't given the right amount of NIL, and all of a sudden, and you see it all the time. People are filling their gaps, they're filling their holes with good football players, and all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of receivers that can flat catch the ball and run, and a lot of people that can do a great job. That through the portal draft, it's give you a chance to really fill your roster a lot quicker.
Let me ask you this: game in Stark Vegas. If they win that game, 5-0 Mississippi State. What would that do to that program? What would that do?
Well, you ever heard that? Give me more cowbell. I want more cowbell. You'd get more cowbell over there. No, that would be. I mean, They're 4-0 for the first time in a long time, and they if they were to pull that off, and you know what, in Starkville, and it's gosh, there's so many places that I've played that their home field has so much uniqueness about it,
Right.
that it's a lot difficult. That if you've never been to Starkville, and all of a sudden you take a 70, maybe 60,000 seat stadium, maybe I'll give everybody a cowbell and allow, because they banned that for a long time.
Right.
They let them bring it back. You talk about, you can't hear a thing. You talk about crowd noise and having to not use a clap, but use a silent snap on the ball and have illegal procedures and all those things. I guarantee Starkville, they would go crazy. And the more you win there, the more the home field advantage does take its place. And I think they've got a chance to get that program back to a bowl winning type program. And once you get to that level, then it doesn't take but one special year to pop off somebody here, pop off somebody there, and get yourself possibly into a chance to get into a conference championship game.
I agree with that. I growing up, I could just tell you, and show my age. Michael Haddix back in the day, and then DeCenzo Miller and Dante Walker, the late Dante Walker. Just back in the day, everybody remembers a few years ago, well, 5 or 6 maybe, Nicky Fitzgerald. They have had some playmakers there. Eric Molds back in the day. So here's the stat. The last time the Volunteers played in Stark Vegas was back 13 years ago, Coach. October 13th, 2012. And that's because of the conference realignment. SEC East, SEC West. I remember last year LSU didn't play South Carolina in Williams-Brice. The last time prior to last year was like 2008. Yeah. So, you get these gaps of 10, 12 years where these teams don't play. Prior to that, I think it was in the 90s. I tell you, I think it was the first game Peyton Manning started taking over for Todd Helton. I remember that game back in Miss State. It was like 94. So it's 8.5 points. It's right around 8. I might take the points with Stark Vegas. I don't know. I might take
I think it's going to be feast or famine. I think you're probably got a 50-50 chance of getting the 8. Tennessee, they'll either hit a bunch of big ones and it'll be and Mississippi State will not be able to keep up. Right. Or they'll knock them down. They'll keep it close, and all of a sudden Tennessee will get a little bit nervous. And you talk about a ball game now. If you don't get ahead and you play them tight, you play Mississippi State tight in Starkville, you got a chance of being in a dangerous situation in the second half because of the momentum and the energy that's going to come from that stadium.
Absolutely. Coach and I are going to break down all the top 25 battles. We have a couple more shows throughout this week. We'll give our picks. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. We'll be back throughout the week on We're Gonna Run It. Have a great day, everyone.
So long.